Yeah.
Welcome everyone to the Friday afternoon series. Debbie McRae is back. It's been a while, and I have my note paper ready as always because her content is just so helpful for those on this path. So we're grateful to have you here. And I will put a little plug in. I call her the Queen of Healthy Boundaries. If you've been on this, you've heard that before. She has a boundaries work group starting again this month for partners. So consider that. I'll put the link in the chat as well. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Debbie.
Thank you. I am so grateful to be here. It has been a month, and I bring into our Friday webinars what I have seen recently show up as I'm working with betrayed partners. And this actually came up in the recent Empowered Women's Retreat that I helped facilitate. And I heard time and time again the question being asked, how do I know if my partner's truly in recovery? What do I see? I may see them going into their therapist. I might see them going to a group, a 12-step meeting, but is this real change or are they just checking the boxes? So I thought it would be good today to just discuss how can I tell if my partner's in recovery? What are the signs of effective recovery work? How do I know they're actually making some headway, and that it gives me then the opportunity to feel safe and then move into feeling trust? So today I'm going to approach it. I'm going to talk to both the betrayed partner and the betraying partner, because I want both of them to understand what you see and what you don't see when somebody's really doing healthy recovery. So I'm going to help the betraying or the addict partner understand the things that they would be doing if they were truly focusing on their own intentional, effective recovery work. And for the betrayed partner, I'm going to help them understand what are the patterns of recovery that I would see over time that would indicate that my partner is doing their work and that there is safety in the relationship so I can move towards my partner. To both, I would say that one good week of recovery work doesn't prove that they're truly in recovery, and one conversation that goes really poorly doesn't erase all the efforts that have been made. Recovery is consistent. There are some efforts that don't go well. And the important thing is that we see in our recovery work that we figure out what we did wrong, we redo it, and we try again over and over and over again. So you see that consistency in recovery. You see the betraying partner being respectful and empathetic over a significant length of time. And this helps create that safety and that security for the betrayed partner. So let's talk about just some general signs that you see when the betraying partner is not doing the recovery the way that they should be doing. So I want to talk about just a few red flags. These are strong indicators that the betraying partner is really struggling. So the first sign that you might see is that they're very defensive, they're irritable, or even avoidant when the betrayed partner wants to talk about recovery. So oftentimes the betrayed partner will be shut down. They might see the betraying partner being argumentative. They might even leave the room and stop talking to them. This indicates to the betrayed partner that the person who's hurt them the most is protecting their ego and not focused on repairing the relationship. So that's a big sign that something's up and the recovery is not going well. The second thing that you might see when somebody's struggling with recovery is that they only participate in recovery work when they're pressured by their betrayed partner. So recovery seems to happen after there's an ultimatum. With this, it's more of, I'm being more compliant, I'm not being committed. So true recovery is self-motivated. The betrayed partner doesn't have to light a fire under their addict partner to get them to do the work. The addict partner is willing to do the work on their own and being self-motivated. Another sign that would indicate their struggle in recovery, and that is the betraying partner keeps their recovery work very vague or even secret. So you might hear statements like, oh, don't worry about it, I'm doing my work, I'm working on it, or I don't need to share with you, my group says, you need to stay on your side of the street. There's no specifics around what they're actually doing in their recovery work. And recovery really thrives in openness, honesty, clarity, not the fog of secrecy. So recovery work should be talked about and shared. Another indicator that their struggle is that the betraying partner minimizes the effect of their addiction and the effect it's had on you. So they might say things like, oh, you're overreacting, or even when they maybe don't tell the full truth, they might make comments like, well, what I did really wasn't that bad. And for the betrayed partner, it will just throw them into emotional dysregulation because they are hurting so deeply and they want that hurt, they want that pain acknowledged by the betraying partner. So anytime the betraying partner minimizes the impact of their addiction on the betrayed partner, it blocks their healing. It also gets in the way of the addict partner's recovery work as well. Another indicator that there's struggle in recovery is that you see the betraying partner focusing solely on sexual sobriety. They're ignoring the fact that they need to have an overall recovery plan. So they're ignoring the emotional part, the relational part that they need to focus on, the changes they need to make. So they're white knuckling it in essence, but they're not adding to that all the other support that they need, all the other work that they need to be doing, including repairing trust with the betrayed partner. They need to understand that they've got to learn how to manage emotions. They've got to work on developing empathy, taking ownership of their behaviors, adding in new coping skills and tools that they use on a regular basis. And included in that is also gaining relational skills and tools. Another indicator would be that they use anger, they withdraw, or they use boundaries in an unhealthy way to shut down conversations. So one of the things I do see that shows up is I might see the betraying partner all of a sudden call a timeout boundary in order to control a discussion that they don't like. In that case, that's not healthy. And what you're doing is you're shutting off that betrayed partner's need to put a voice to their pain or to talk about a specific topic that maybe they need to have clarity on so they can feel safe and secure. So a healthy boundary creates safety. It doesn't muzzle the truth. It doesn't shut the betrayed partner down. We don't use anger. We don't use silent treatment when conversations are difficult. Again, that leaves the betrayed partner sitting in their pain. Another indicator is that there might be some struggle in recovery is that the betraying partner breaks transparency agreements. And they may not then circle back around, take accountability, and do the repair. So this would look like things like being willing to share devices, right? Sharing your location, putting schedules maybe into a shared file, and being really transparent about all of the things you're doing about creating that openness, again, the transparency again, so that safety is established. They might forget to do it. Well, when you're in true recovery, you don't forget. Another indicator that there's struggle in recovery is that the betraying partner might deflect or blame shift instead of practicing accountability. Accountability is huge in recovery. So if any story that the betraying partner shares ends with the betrayed partner being at fault, they're not taking accountability. Instead, the addict partner is protecting their own shame instead of facing it. It's their shame showing up. Another struggle would be where they continue to manipulate or gaslight. So they might twist the betrayed partner's reality. And when they do that, recovery isn't happening. Recovery tells the truth, even when there's a consequence. So it's very important. So the bottom line is that these patterns that I just shared don't indicate that there's consistent, healthy recovery that the betraying partner is committed to. And so it's really helpful to understand what you would be seeing if they were taking their recovery seriously and if they were doing it effectively. So I am going to briefly talk about 15 signs, and there could be many, many more, but I've narrowed it down to these 15, that your betraying partner is in effective addiction recovery. So let's look at what genuine change looks like. So you would be seeing, first sign, the addict partner accepting full responsibility for their choices, for their behaviors, and the impact it has had on the betrayed partner without excuses. So what you would see and hear is the betraying partner saying things like, I did this to you. I'm the one who hurt you. I need to own that what I did in my addiction has really caused you so much pain. I've betrayed you. And then they add to that, and here's how I'm repairing it. So they're taking full responsibility and they're taking accountability and not making excuses for what they've done. The second sign is that you would see the addict partner offering sincere, specific apologies, and they would do that as often as necessary. So it might be something like, I'm sorry for lying about being home at a certain time. I had full intention that I wasn't going to make it at 6. I knew I wouldn't get there till 6:15. I can see that I broke your trust. So here's what I'm going to do differently. Next time, if I'm going to be more than 2 to 3 minutes late, I'm going to send you a text to let you know. Or maybe it's if I'm even going to be 1 minute late, I'm going to send you a text and let you know that as well. I like that second example better. The third sign, you would be seeing the addict partner showing empathy for your pain, and you would see defensiveness. So you would see the person in recovery really trying to understand where you're coming from and then validating your pain rather than allowing their shame to get in the way. Because when we go into shame, one of the things we do is we become very defensive because we're trying to protect how we're being viewed by the other person, or how we're actually even viewing ourselves internally. Instead, you would hear the betraying partner say things like, I can understand why you hurt. I can see how my actions have hurt you. I want to listen to how you're hurting right now. So that would be the messaging that you give the betrayed partner, that I really care about you. And I want to hear how your pain is showing up for you right now in this moment. Really, really important. And again, empathy is one of those things that is a higher skill set. It is learned, but you can show it very simply just by acknowledging when your betrayed partner's in pain. So that's very, very important to be aware of any defensiveness that comes up, and instead, rather than focusing on you, turning your focus to the betrayed partner. Sign number 4 is that you keep the communication respectful, especially during disagreements. And this is really hard because this means we've got to have emotional regulation. So you go into hard conversations knowing that you can disagree without being disrespectful. And you stay present in the moment. And instead of turning your focus on the betrayed partner and making yourself a victim, you're willing to sit and just listen. You're also willing to take a time out if you need to, if the conversation is not going well. But in that, you're also willing to come back around and to re-engage when you call the time out, because that's the healthy boundary. That is that if I call a timeout on this very difficult conversation, then I agree to come back within an hour, 2 hours, but no more than 24 hours to continue with the conversation. Sign number 5. The addict partner regulates their emotions. You're going to see more and more that they're responding more thoughtfully. They're doing it with awareness. You see them respond rather than react. So what you might see the betraying partner do is say things like, I'm feeling really triggered right now, so I'm going to pause right now. I'm going to take a breath. I'll come back in 5 minutes so that I can share with you what's going on for me. Very, very important. The emotional regulation actually for both the betrayed partner and the betraying partner when we're having hard conversations. And like I talk about all the time, that timeout boundary is so important because it prevents further disconnection. So it's just really important that you both honor that timeout boundary, and whoever calls the timeout boundary comes back later to finish the conversation. Sign number 6 is that the addict partner recognizes and takes accountability around the past, the present, and the future effects of their addiction on the betrayed partner. So, what that would be that you can sit and hear about your partner's pain, about what you did in the past and how it's affected them in the here and now. You would sit and be able to listen to them and acknowledge their pain and take accountability for when they have fear around the future. So you have an attitude of, I know I created this harm. I am committed to working every day to rebuild trust, to continue to do my recovery work, and often reminding the betrayed partner that they didn't do anything to deserve what is happening to them. So it's really, really important that you acknowledge both the pain from the past, how painful it is in the present, and how painful it is to think about the future for the betrayed partner. Sign 7 is that the addict partner is taking proactive steps to increase the betrayed partner's sense of safety. So what you would see and you would hear would be things like that transparency of putting schedules into docs, on the calendar, having an accountability plan, sharing your 3-circle recovery plan, maybe sitting down weekly and having a planning meeting where you share what you've got going on this next week as far as your recovery work, whether it's an appointment with your therapist or it is the group work that you've got that week, maybe even needing to take time to do some of your step work and your 12-step. So it's really important to turn and ask the betrayed partner, what do you need to feel safer today, this coming week, and be proactive in doing those things that the betrayed partner needs. Step number 8 is that the addict partner respects the betrayed partner's boundaries and they maintain their own healthy boundaries. So what this looks like is you see the betraying partner honoring when the betrayed partner says no. So no, I'm not willing to engage with you right now and have a conversation. I'm struggling with my own emotional dysregulation. It could be, no, you're not allowed to touch me right now. It doesn't feel safe. And you honor that. You don't push against those boundaries. On the other side, you as the addict partner in recovery also protects the boundaries that you have in place around your recovery commitments. So you go to see your therapist on a regular basis. You attend your meetings when you say you're going to attend your meetings. You don't make excuses for reasons not to go. And you also have really clearly outlined boundaries on how you manage your own triggers so that you have put into place things that you're going to do that supports your recovery work. And I think it's really important to share that with the betrayed partner so they get a sense of you getting what you need to do in order to be safe and to not slip back into your addictive behaviors. 9, what you would see here is the addict partner ending the manipulation and the gaslighting entirely. So if you're a betraying partner, you commit to not twisting facts, you commit to not diminishing your partner's feelings, you acknowledge them. And if you make a mistake, you own up to the mistake. You name it and you do a repair around it. Rather than minimizing is a form of manipulation. Flipping it back around on the betrayed partner is manipulation and gaslighting. And so you become aware, you learn about what kinds of behaviors you have that could be manipulative, and you understand how you have gaslit in the past and even currently. And this might be something that you go in and work with your therapist, so you've got clarity on that. And I know that a betrayed partner would love it if you would come back and share with them exactly what your plan is around that. Okay, sign 10, that you're in recovery. You see the addict partner working consistently with a qualified addiction counselor, and they share their experiences in their recovery work, and they share their progress. So it would be that your betrayed partner sees you going to therapy on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. Maybe it's every Tuesday. You may come home from your work in your therapy session, just sharing maybe what you're focusing on for the next week. You might share where you're at in your step work so they understand what you're actually doing and how far you're going. You might even share with them aha moments that you gain from going to your group. I think all of that's really, really important. I oftentimes hear betrayed partners come in, and what they say to me is, I ask about their 12-step group and they tell me they can't talk about it. Well, it's true. We don't want to talk about individuals' names, but we can talk about in a 12-step group, maybe what you learned, maybe what you heard other people are struggling with. That's okay. Now, when we do actual recovery work and we have a group where there's confidentiality, then that's different. You can come out of that group sharing what you shared in group, what you learned in group, or maybe the concept that was taught in group. But it's okay to share your progress. And I think it's really important to do this in order to create safety for the betrayed partner. Sign 11 is that you participate regularly in a structured recovery program. You don't try to do it yourself. So you are willing to attend meetings. You are willing to have a sponsor. You're willing to initiate a daily check-in. So there's that structure. So you check in daily. It could be with the betrayed partner. You might have a structured check-in that you use. You might check in with your accountability partner every day. It could be with your sponsor daily. But the more structure you have and your betrayed partner sees, the safer you are. So it's really important that you don't just wake up every morning and decide that morning what you're going to do for recovery, but you have it planned out. You know what you're going to do each and every day way in advance. Sign 12 is that the addict partner shares their recovery process openly, right? So they, like I mentioned earlier, they share the 3-circle recovery plan. Maybe you even share some of your struggles you're having and who you reached out to for support and what you're going to do about it. I just love it when I hear the recovering partners being open with what they're learning in group. Maybe it's a concept, maybe it's something they've learned about themselves. Again, that creates safety for the betrayed partner. Sign 13 is that the addict partner is willing to do a therapeutic disclosure to rebuild trust, and they do it without resistance. Oftentimes, I see a dynamic show up where it's almost like the addict partner gets to decide if there's going to be therapeutic disclosure, and based on my training, it's the betrayed partner who gets to determine whether or not a formal therapeutic disclosure and those 3 important steps of the disclosure take place. So you would see the betraying partner being very willing to be radically honest and using the help of their therapist to put together that disclosure document, to prepare for it, and to go through the full 3 steps to bring the truth to light. It's so important in rebuilding trust for the betrayed partner. The 14th sign that you would see if somebody's really in recovery is that they handle difficult situations with their betrayed partner without taking things personally. And they would be able to sit. I tell the betraying partners, it's kind of like you got to put on Teflon and let all the shame stuff that you might soak in and take on, let it just bounce off. Don't absorb it. Don't take it personally, because you have more of a chance of getting defensive or shutting down, walking away, because we know shame shows up as those fight, flight, and freeze responses. So instead, what you would be doing is you would say, gosh, I'm hearing what you're saying. And you're going to sit and listen to those emotions that your betrayed partner has. You take accountability and you say, yes, I did do that. So you've got this attitude of, I'm going to sit in this uncomfortable conversation and I'm going to grow used to it. And I'm going to turn to my betrayed partner and ask him, okay, what do you need in this moment? What can I do to create safety? I hear you. So important. It's a hard skill set. Again, it's one of those things that you acquire the further along you get in recovery. So in the beginning, you might have to fake it till you make it. And eventually you're going to move into the ability to sit there with empathy and really hear your partner's pain. And the last thing I want to share is you just keep showing up. You have an attitude of consistency. And you just, even when you make mistakes, you learn from your mistakes, you own your mistakes, and you figure out how you're going to do it in a healthier way the next time something similar comes around. So recovery isn't perfection. Recovery is that I might make some mistakes along the way. And when I do that, I have a plan for that. I have a support group for that. And what I'm going to do is in this moment, I'm going to make doing recovery behaviors and my recovery work my number one priority. So that means that as the betraying partner, that you're going to practice your healthy recovery tools. You're going to work on repairing the relationship throughout the work that you do on your own addiction recovery. I do want to talk briefly about what if you are a betrayed partner and you see your betraying partner isn't doing recovery. That's really a difficult space to be in. And so what you have to do is you've got to bring the focus back to you, meaning you've got to come back to your own body and work on your own emotional regulation and helping your brain have that bandwidth in order to handle what you're dealing with. You're going to work on your boundaries and focusing on the healthy boundaries that create that safe container for you. You're going to have your support network that you turn to when you're struggling, when you need support, when you need advice, when you need help in emotionally regulating. And you're also going to focus on strengthening trust in yourself. Those things are so very important. I want to add that self-care is an important part of this, giving yourself permission to every day participate in daily recovery routines and rituals are going to help you stay emotionally regulated. So it could be everything from starting that morning time routine. I like to have my clients and group members come up with a recovery plan about what are you going to do when you first get up every morning? What are you going to do when you go to bed every night? And then let's add some things in throughout the day that support your recovery. I think an important part of having a recovery plan for the betrayed partner is having your support circle. I talk about this often and how important it is to know who you're going to turn to when you're struggling. You do not have to struggle and be in your betrayal all by yourself. And we do have a tendency as betrayed partners to isolate. So connection is so important. I want you to understand that small, consistent self-care really helps to stabilize your trauma symptoms. So that's very important. We talked about boundaries a little bit. If you're really bad at boundaries, consider taking the boundaries group. You want to have good internal boundaries around maybe safety seeking, making sure that you're really emotionally regulated before you decide, maybe you're going to check devices or you're going to go back in and look at the emails again, making sure that you're doing it to create the right kind of safety. You've got good external boundaries. So it would look like, when you're having a conversation and the betraying partner is very reactive, then without becoming defensive or hostile yourself, you just pause, call the timeout, exit the conversation, and then come back later to continue it if it feels safe enough. It's really important that you have your own healing path. I know we want to get on the healing path of the betraying partner because sometimes they're just not doing it as quickly as we would like them to do it. But it's so important that you recognize that you are just as important in this. So have your own partner-sensitive therapist. Have a CSAT that understands what you need to do in your own recovery so you start to feel better. And reconnect. I've been working with some of my clients recently about how do I step out of that label of I'm a betrayed partner because it becomes our identity. And while it is a really huge aspect of our life when we're experiencing the betrayal trauma, it doesn't have to define us. And we can also start to reconnect to other things in our life, other activities. Whether it's creativity, whether it's getting out and doing service for other people, so we can kind of step out of that betrayal momentarily. And sometimes it is really helpful to even go out and spend time with people who help you forget that you're experiencing the trauma momentarily. Maybe you do have friends you can go to lunch with and you can even laugh with for a little bit of time. I think it's just so important that, we step out of that every so often and do things that really support us. Like I said, your life is so much more than just the experience of betrayal. So just real briefly in conclusion, I just want to say, here's some of the takeaways from today. One is that Recovery really is a choice, and there are specific things we can do and choose to do in our recovery. Also, that betrayed partners, you can see patterns. You'll notice these things. These are indicators that the partner who's doing the recovery work, who is trying to work on their addiction and overcoming those destructive patterns, are really making healthy changes. And if you're not seeing those changes, then you get to focus on your own healing. You get to reinforce your own safety boundaries, and then you get to choose maybe what your next steps are. So, anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm hoping that it will help you in kind of having some clarity on what to look for to know if there's really effective recovery taking place.
As always, so much good stuff. So I love that you were talking about how to step out of the label of a betrayed partner. Like,
Mhm.
and I have shared often, that I hate when addiction takes over everything. Like, it's the focus for both people, and you talked about focusing on your healing, like especially if they aren't doing what they need to do. I think it's really important to focus on your healing even if they are doing things that are helpful, because the more you're taking care of you, the more regulated you are, the more you're going to be able to see what's really going on. But also, like, I loved it at the beginning when you were talking about, like, one misstep, does not mean they're not in recovery. One good week of recovery work does not mean they're in recovery. Like, all of those things. Oh, we would love questions, by the way, in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. So it is really the pattern, and it's the overall. And I wrote down too, it's not linear. This is not like, I'm going to, like, even the steps, I'm going to do the steps and then I'm going to be all better and everything's good. No, this is real life. It's messy. Things come up. So it is not linear. When you were talking about self-care, and I have what I do in the morning, like all of that. But I also have some reminders in my phone that go off, that remind me, have I been drinking enough water? Am I doing deep breathing? I mean, whatever. We have these little technology things at our fingertips that can help us remember to pay attention. And that would be part of self-care. If I'm prioritizing, I'm scheduling me, I'm scheduling that self-care so that I can I'm showing up for myself, and I'm showing up in the best version of myself, in other situations. And speaking of that, because we don't have questions yet, so I was really hungry this morning, and I was thinking about, going out, and my husband, I said something and he said, if you do that, you're going to be really hangry. And I said, yeah, I'm probably gonna be hangry in 10 minutes. And so I made the choice of staying and eating and doing that. That was the path I chose. The other one would have been fun. But anyway, but it was the self-care moment. And I had the wherewithal to talk to my husband, get my support of, like, here's my options. He knows me really well. He is someone that can read me. And I was like, oh, you're probably already seeing those little hangry signs. So self-care for me is really important. Um, and we still want questions. I also highlighted that you're talking about sharing. And I think it's really important to share. Like, I share, wow, it was a really good meeting. I had some awarenesses. I talk about me. I never am telling. Uh, when you go to a 12-step meeting, it's, what you hear here, who you see here, when you leave here, let it stay here. So it's one of those things where we do that. But yes, like, I can't leave all the good stuff that I've learned, there. I am absolutely taking that with me, but I am protecting people's anonymity so I can share, what I've shared. I think with therapy too, it's really, I've had some partners that go, like, tell me everything you said in therapy. And, like, I perceive that your relationship with your therapist needs to be a safe place where you can get all that stuff out, process it, and see what it really means. And so if you have to edit that would be difficult. And so from a partner standpoint, I know you want to know, but I'm also going, like, and you want that person to be able to, say the truth and get that stuff, you know go get the help you need. So I think that that's important. And then when you were talking about Number 10, willingness to do a formal therapeutic disclosure without resistance. And I think of how often I'm hearing the stall tactics, and I bet you have seen this too, where it's like, oh, not ready, really need to do more work. And I don't know if, the therapist, I don't know what's going on, but like to me, like there could be something really major mental health issues or whatever, but otherwise it feels like I'm dragging my feet, so the focus is still on I'm hanging on to this rather than I'm looking to help my partner be able to move forward. And then the last thing I'll share before we get to oh, when you were talking about handle difficult situations, that was number 14,
Mhm.
without taking it personally. One of the promises of 12 step is I will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. A difficult conversation is a baffle, and so I think it's one of those things where we learn to do things differently. We learn to have we take the focus off of ourselves. So it's like we're going like, I really want to know, I want to be in a relationship. And if I'm just, getting ready with my spiel of like why, like even when you talked about, sharing something, rather than saying, I agree, my behaviors, I could go, well, that one detail was that's not correct, and that isn't the point. The point is if I want to heal the relationship, I can understand how my behavior, whether it's completely 100% or not, or my view is different, I can understand how this would be really painful. With all of my past history, I can absolutely understand why that would be triggering for you. And, how can I help you have safety in this moment? Way different than, no, that detail is wrong. That detail is wrong. And you need to understand. So great stuff. As always, I've got 2 pages of stuff again. So, okay. First question, or did you have anything you wanted to
I
comment
was
on?
just going to add,
Oh,
you talked about focusing on yourself. A couple of things I want to talk about. One of them is I love the idea of focusing inward. I think for both the betrayed partner and the betraying partner, just it's so important we understand what's going on internally for us. For many of us, we've had to learn how to identify emotions. But even like you said, just simple things like, am I hungry? Am I tired? Right? Am I lonely? Am I stressed out in this moment? Right? And I love the Holtz acronym for that, right? Hungry,
mm-hmm,
angry, anxious, lonely, tired, stressed. It gives
mm-hmm,
me kind of a framework because for both, individuals, we have to work on that regulation, right? The regulation of self, of our emotions, of our thoughts. And so we have to be aware of our internal world. Really important. The other focus that you talked about a little bit was, focusing on ourself. And oftentimes I see betrayed partners, while they're well-meaning in this, they believe that their recovery really is dependent on how well their addict partner's doing in their recovery. So it's like, I'm doing well as long as he's doing well. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. What we have to do as a betrayed partner is my recovery and healing is just as important as theirs. And so they could be struggling and I can still remain emotionally regulated because I have my recovery plan in place. And I know that's really hard. It takes a lot of practice. It really does, but we can get to that point. So we do have to. It's unfortunate as a betrayed partner, you didn't deserve this. It's unfair that you're having to do your own healing. It's unfair that you have to have a recovery plan, but it's still so important if you want to get to a place where you feel better. So that's just what I wanted to add because I loved what you shared.
yeah, well, and like I do not want my happiness and joy completely dependent on somebody's who has brokenness, their ability to do the right thing every single moment. If my day was dependent on, like that's disempowering. I need to have it be. I'm going to do what I need to do. I can choose to have, I can choose my reactions. I can choose my attitude, even when there's difficult things. I've had a couple of days this week that were like, well, that's a challenging one. And you know what? I was just like, this is just life, and continue to do the next right thing.
Mhm.
And I had a good week, even despite some really challenging situations, like I don't have to fall into the, oh, well, everything's horrible, therefore. So so yes, this stuff has happened. It won't unhappen. And I've used this analogy before, but it's like you're in a car. There's a car accident. It's really bad. You weren't driving. You didn't do anything. Guess what? You're going to go to the hospital and get some help and support. Figure things out. There may be long-term PT or healing or whatever. Get the
Mhm.
help so that you are able to come through this as healthy and able to show up for yourself as you possibly can. So.
Yeah.
Okay, first question, betrayer here. I'm having a lot of trouble with empathy and validating my wife's feelings without going into shame. Any tips are greatly appreciated.
Great question. So I talked about it earlier and about putting on your Teflon suit. So sometimes just having that mental image. I will also tell the recovering partners, just imagine there's plexiglass right between you and the other person. Their words are going to stay on that side. You don't have to absorb it. So that's easy, but what are some specific things you can do? Here's what I have discovered. If you feel your shame coming up, understand how it feels in your body for your shame to show up, right? Because we all feel emotions in our body. So if all of a sudden you're getting this adrenaline rush, which is what I get when my shame comes up,
Mhm.
then I need to notice, okay, I'm in my shame. If I'm starting to get defensive with the other person, again, I can call it what it is. I think my shame's coming up. So there's an element of slowing it down. So I'm going to, first of all, put on my Teflon suit, put up my plexiglass wall, right? I'm just going to notice if all of a sudden my shame gets triggered. And one of the ways that I work on kind of staying out of my shame when I'm trying to hear the other person is sometimes I'll actually say to them, can I take notes so I can really understand what you're saying? Because in that, I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen for the feeling words. What are they telling me I'm feeling? And what are they feeling those distressing emotions around? So, what we want to do is we want to, when we're showing empathy, I am validating their experience. And so I'm acknowledging that my partner's really struggling. So it's easy to do that. I love Carol Sheets' AVR formula. So with AVR, you can learn that formula in your mind, and A stands for acknowledging, right, your partner's pain. So just imagine that you're going to put your telescope down and you're going to look through your partner's telescope and see, gosh, what would it be like to be my betrayed partner in this situation? So I acknowledge that this is really hard for you. You are having to deal with my repeated, slips. And then we got to validate the emotion. And what I love about this formula is you just use 5 basic emotions, which are sad, angry, lonely, fearful, happy, and then reassure. So you reassure them with what are you going to do to help them feel safer? Reassure them that you're in recovery or that you're taking one step or that you're going to work on setting healthier boundaries. Whatever it is they bring to you, reassure them and then follow through
Yeah,
what you
yes.
say you're going to do. That's really important. I have found that when my shame gets triggered, if I flip it around and again, I'm listening for how they might be feeling, and I imagine I'm looking at life through their eyes, or I've stepped into their shoes, or I'm looking through their telescope, and that really helps me step out of my shame. Like I said, slow it down, say your shame is coming up, say that you're really trying to have empathy, ask them how they're feeling, ask them what it is they're feeling about, and then memorize the AVR formula. It makes a huge difference. And again, you just have to practice it over and over and over again. Any attempt at empathy is better than no attempt at all. That means a lot to a betrayed partner if you try to have empathy and don't get
And the reassure, like, yeah, don't go, oh, I'm going to go do this, and then don't do it. Like that is the absolute worst. Is like more lip service. I'm going to do this. Don't you worry. It's more minimizing. So follow through. But I love that Debbie talked about slow everything down. We say that, Dr. Eddie says that, everybody slow everything down, because with us addicts, it's usually react, 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 and respond, respond, respond. Slow it down.
Yeah.
Okay. I cannot believe I'm in my 50s and just learning about boundaries. I have read a lot, etc., but I don't feel I'm practicing them much. Do you have any advice on real world practice of these principles? Almost like role play, anything else? Our books for practicing. If you're a betrayed partner, I'm going to put it in again. Please join the work group. It's not just reading a book, like, because everybody's boundaries are unique. So please, please join that. If you're an addict partner, we've got other things for you, but
Mhm.
please, Debbie.
So it's okay that you're in your 50s and you're just learning about boundaries.
Yeah.
Most of us were not taught boundaries growing up. In fact, many of us had our boundaries violated growing up. So they were non existent. We didn't have good role models. The word boundaries was never spoken of. And remember, boundaries are about creating safety. For many of us, the way boundaries were presented growing up was it was a punishment, right? It was about somebody
For
controlling
control.
us. Yes. And so there's this negative connotation about boundaries. So if you can shift how you approach boundaries and think about what do I need for safety? So it's what will I allow other people to do or not do, right? In order for me to feel safe to move towards them. Also, what am I willing to do so that I'm safe so people can move towards me? So when we think it about in those terms, it makes it really easy. I love the book Set Boundaries, Find Peace. A lot of practical ideas and bullet point lists and things like that. I've done several webinars on boundaries that I would recommend that you circle back around and listen to, because I'll talk about a boundary and what is, a boundary really is, there's two types, right? One's an internal boundary, the boundaries I put in place for me, and external boundaries, the boundaries I put in place for other people. So basically, a boundary is, right, if you do this, then I'm going to do this. So think about it in terms. And consequences aren't about me controlling the other person. They're about what I'm going to do if you don't honor what I need for safety, which typically is I'm going to step away from a conversation. I'm going to step away from relating with you in a certain way. It might be there's no physical touch, but I'll talk to you about just the logistics of the house or the children. It might be that I'm going to go sleep in another room for 2 or 3 days until I feel like it's safe to come back into the room we share. So it's all about, right, if I can move towards you because you're safe, or it's about I've got to step back because you're not safe. It's about also creating safety for other people yourself. So there's so much I could say about boundaries. My advice would be to listen to some of the webinars, to join the boundaries group, to think about boundaries in terms of safety, um, and and find your friends who are boundaried and ask them what kind of boundaries they have in place. So if you're part of a work group on your betrayal, if you've got a therapist, go in and work with your therapist on boundaries. I inevitably work with all my betrayed partners on boundaries because we have to have them in order to create safety in our recovery. So, any other thoughts, Tammy?
Oh yeah. Betrayed partners, your boundaries, if you had them, are trounced.
Mhm.
And addict partners don't have them. We don't want boundaries. That would wreck our style. We need to be able to go do whatever we want, and we're going to tell you why you're wrong and all of that. So boundaries, and I see this outside the addiction world. So this is not just unique within the addiction world. I think it's more prevalent because addiction is, and it doesn't matter what form, is boundaryless, and partners, get gaslit. But lots of people in this world, don't have healthy boundaries. So, and I think the best relationships, friends, family, whatever, have healthy boundaries. Like, where you are, where the other, like, it just makes everything so much easier to navigate. You're not wondering, about things. So please don't be hard on yourself. Go, wow, I have an opportunity now to shift things and learn. so that this next chapter in my life, I can be practicing healthy boundaries.
Mhm.
Betrayed spouse, sometimes I struggle with wording. Do you have some tips on how to start a difficult conversation that creates safety for both partners and promotes openness, vulnerability? Thank you. I love this one. I
Yeah,
start
I
them
just,
with, I need to have a difficult conversation with you. I mean, I literally do that. Are you open to it? Like,
yeah. We just talked about this in one of the groups I ran. I can't remember. I think it was at the retreat actually. And
oh,
we talked about this, and it's like, okay, how do you approach having a difficult conversation about something that's really important for you to discuss? And I think some of the things that I shared was, first of all, before you have that difficult conversation, really sit down and have clarity with yourself as to what it is you want to discuss. I'm a firm believer in I bullet point before I go in. If it's something like the 4-part talking boundary, where you talk about things like, the data, what I see and hear, right? The stories and thinking I go into, the emotion it brings up, and the boundary or, my need, I write that all out. I have it, and I will then go to the individual and I set up a time to have the difficult conversation. So I'm going to use my spouse as an example. I might go to my spouse knowing that I want to talk about a specific topic. I've had some feelings and emotions around it. I might go to my partner and say, hey, I want to get together and talk about connection. When would be a good time today for you to talk about that? Right? And they usually let me know. Sometimes my partner will say, well, hey, I'm available right now. So I'm going in prepared. And then I also like to set up where are we going to have that conversation? So for me, I like doing it at the kitchen table, or we'll do it in the family room on the sofa. We also have a couple chairs there that makes it kind of nice. And so I will go in with my bullet points. I will go in with something to write with, and I even invite my partner to come in and tell them they're welcome to write notes. I'm even willing to share my bullet points if they want my bullet points. And so then that way it kind of keeps me on track. You can say to them, this is really difficult for me to share with you, but it's important that I put words to this. And so I will set a boundary with the other person that says, I need 7 minutes. I want to just go through the things on my list, and then I would like to offer you 7 minutes or 5 minutes so I can hear what you have to say. And then after that, we can talk back and forth about things. And so if the other person interrupts me, I usually will very gently just put a hand up and say, well, I still have 3 more minutes, right? Hold that thought, and then I can continue going. Again, when I go into that conversation with them, I might let the individual know, here's what I need. So as I share this with you, I just need you to validate my feelings. I will do that oftentimes with my spouse, right? I'm going in and I may not want ideas. I may not want him to tell me, what I did or didn't do, effectively. I may just want him to say, wow, that's really hard. And it's okay for me to go into a conversation, a hard conversation, and say, I just need you to listen and I need you to have empathy. And I need you to understand and share with me that you understand how I'm feeling. And so I've kind of set the expectation for the other individual. And then I'm also a believer in we don't drag conversations out for hours. So maybe our capacity, I know my capacity is about 45 minutes, and that is like I'm really having a hard time after about 30. We go into it well fed, well rested, maybe put a timer on it, make a note of where you're at. Maybe you just take a 5-minute break, go get something to eat and drink, go for a walk outside, and then come back in and resume. But again, I'm a firm believer in slowing it down. Lots of times, and if we're triggered at any point in time in the conversation, again, we're going to take a pause. We're going to go do some self-care. We'll come back in an hour. Takes the brain, once we're triggered, it takes our brain about 20 minutes, 30 minutes to reconnect to the front part of our brain where we have emotional regulation. So just keep that in mind. And again, I like what Tammy said. Sometimes you just have to say, this is a really hard thing for me to talk about, right? This goes against my nature. I'm really struggling to share these hard things. Just let them know and then share. But again, put boundaries around who's sharing when, who's got the talking stick, and who doesn't. And maybe even asking for them to reflect back what they heard you say so you know that you're on the same page, so you can use some of your communication skills and tools. So look up reflective communication. Really, they're just saying back what they heard me say. All of those things are really, really important. And if it's a really hard conversation and you really struggle, do it with the support of a therapist or both of your
That
therapists.
was what I was going to add. If you need to
Mhm.
level it up, go,
Yeah.
this is beyond our pay grade. We want to get a resolution. We need some better help. But yeah, if I have a difficult conversation, I'm not going to try, like my husband, it's not going to be while he's watching a basketball game or something. Like I pick my time. I make sure that I know exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. So like what my goal is, not exactly what I'm doing, but
Or go into your
yeah,
therapist and work on what you're going to say. I do that
absolutely. Yeah.
often. I do that often with my clients. And then that way they've got a plan in place. And,
Hmm.
sometimes it goes really well then. And
Hmm.
sometimes it doesn't go well. But you know what you're going to do? You're going to do a
Hmm.
timeout. And
Hmm.
you might even say at that point, you know what? Maybe we're going to have to agree to disagree on this. And let's get into our therapist's office, or let's go see your therapist or my therapist or our couples therapist and talk through it there. So.
Next one, betrayed partner here. Thankfully, I no longer feel the need to manage my SA husband's recovery. I just focus on my own healing while he focuses on his recovery. However, is there an appropriate way to nudge him if he's slipping into his recovery work and doesn't realize it?
I think there is. I think that's where check-ins come in. Um, and of course, there's different types of check-ins like Fanos, and I've got a recovery check-in that I do. And a lot of times when I go and I'm going to share something with my partner, I share again using the four-part talking boundary because it's really sharing my internal world. Asking them if they're open to input, I think is another great way. But the other thing that I really like to do that is so helpful is make it about connection. Make it about, can I just share with you what's going on for me? Because if I share this with you, then I feel like I can move towards you and we can have more connection. Wouldn't you agree that you want to have connection? And everybody does. We all want connection. We're hardwired for it in our DNA. And so if you can approach it that way, and again, with a four-part talking boundary, it might be when I see you not going to your therapist, on a regular basis, and you've missed your recovery meetings now 3 weeks in a row, right? The story I'm in right now is that you're not doing your recovery work consistently, and that makes me very fearful. So I am just wondering if you'd be open to hearing what I need in this moment to see you do in order for me to feel like, yes, he's doing recovery work, and see if they're willing to hear. So, yes, absolutely. I think communication is very important. I think there's a way we can approach in a very boundaried way to talk about it. And again, maybe even use the idea I used earlier of, hey, can we sit down and talk about this later today? Or when's a good time? So that they're prepared. I always like to tell the other individual, if we're not going to talk about it right away, I always like to give them an idea of what the topic's going to be. And that way, it kind of reduces the fear around that. So, anyway, those are some of my ideas.
Next one, betrayed partner, 4 years since discovery, and I'm trying to rebuild with my partner. He is trying, but his efforts don't always land. I notice a lot of self-protective judgments that I notice in my mind. I don't say it to him. How do I work through this in my individual work when I sense he shows up like he did in the past? I think my body is trying to protect me from his old version and that betrayed me and hurt me so much.
Okay, so the simple answer would, here's where I would kind of question and work with you on, and that is, it sounds like stuff from the past is coming up in the present, right? I'm trying to figure out, are you really safe? And my brain and my body are putting me on alert that you may not be safe, even though all of the facts, all the indicators are there that you're doing recovery. Find a therapist who will do some deeper work with you, whether it's EMDR or accelerated resolution therapy is another one that I like to use. And let's go in and let's see if is there something from the past that your brain still has stored in that area of your brain where we store trauma. And there are ways that we can reprocess that, file it away. So now you get to this space of, I call it neutrality. It's where I can be around my partner and all of a sudden all of my trauma from the past, right? My hypervigilance, maybe it's my fear, maybe it's my anxiety, maybe it's repetitive ruminating thoughts. They don't come back into play anymore. It's like, I'm okay. So, and that is self protection and it's automatic and you don't have control over it. It's just your brain putting you on high alert and trying to protect you. So, I would encourage you kind of explore that. If you've got a therapist, go in and talk about this pattern that's showing up and see if you can come up with a plan. Because you're right, your body and your brain still want to protect you from the old version of your partner. So that is part of the deeper work that the betrayed partner has to do.
And I put in Dr. Eddie has going deeper for betrayed partners, and that's inner child work. And I don't know you, so I'm just, he has that September 22nd, and it's a special edition webinar. But I was going like, oh, I wonder if there's some, like, it's been 4 years. I wonder if there's some layers below that's pinging back on, and it would be interesting to explore that too. I love EMDR and all of those as well, but consider joining us on the webinar on September 22nd. It does require registration. It's a little different one, but I put the link in the chat. Last question. Can you share why a check-in should be separate and distinct from a connection time with each other? Or should they be, I like the idea of experiencing new, different light and fun with connection, while check-in may not be as much. Also, question for Tammy. Yesterday, you mentioned the 30-minute check-in would be too long. Oh, yeah. Can you explain why, please? If I'm only taking time in a given week, this doesn't feel like long enough for me. 15 minutes for each to share what's going on with it. So a check-in to me is daily or a few times a week or whatever. And it's, in my book, 3 to 5 minutes. We're sharing and just connecting. I love the, connection time of going and doing and fun and all of those things. Separately, I think it's great to have a scheduled time of 20 to 30 minutes multiple times a week, where we sit down and hone in on some different items, like agenda items, like something that has come up. But if I had to sit through a 30-minute check-in every day, I am confident. I mean, I just, Debbie talked about, like, I'm good for 45 minutes, better with 30. Like, I probably, unfortunately, and I'm in recovery for a long time, and I know myself, I would probably dread that because I would feel like it's a task I have to do. Now, I'm also the same person that tried to do the mindfulness, the tapes, and it just felt like a thing to do. So I'm a unique person. I need something that is going to provide me. I love 3 to 5 minute check-ins. I'm gonna connect. I'm gonna know. I'm gonna ask deeper questions later. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely can make time for that and would want to commit to doing that, because the payoff to me for that would be high. So again, I'm a me, and not everybody is. So lots of people have other things, and I have another meeting that we have to go to, but I do need you to answer that question.
Really quickly, I love Gottman's State of the Union check-in. I love it because it covers so many different things, and I think that would be a great check-in to do once a week. It does take a little bit
That's
longer,
different. Yeah.
but that one is not more a recovery check-in. It's really about the relationship. And I'm hearing you say, I want connection. And you
Yeah.
could add things to it in order to make it work for you. But I find it's a positive check-in because we talk about gratitude. We talk about what went right in the relationship. We also talk about maybe what we struggled with in the relationship. And then we talk about needs. So that would be another great one to use. So it's Gottman's State of the Union check-in. And if you can't find it, reach out to Tammy or me and I'll make sure you get it.
Yeah. So I'm typing, and I hear you. A check-in for once a week for 30 minutes. I know me. I want more connection. Like, I would rather have more frequent, uh, so again, this is a me. This is not a you, you know, but I think I remember the question too was like, and he still won't show up and do these things, so then it's like, what, I love having like, let's problem solve this together. What can we do that we're both willing to show up for and take accountability for? So, yeah, again, I realize I'm my own person, and y- it, what works for me may not work for anybody else.
Yeah,
I get
and
it.
and I encourage the person who wrote that question, circle back around in 2 weeks when I'm here, because I
Yeah,
think we could spend more time on this and we could spend some time even problem solving what you're dealing with as well.
sounds good. Thank you. I've got another meeting. They're going, where are you? So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Debbie. Bye
Bye.
bye.